Welcome to Auntie Sermons. I'm Crystal J. I'll be your auntie for today. Don't worry, these are not your grandpa's sermons. Here, we de-center men and talk about the women in the Bible, all of them, named and unnamed. So get yourself something to drink, get comfortable, you might want some tissues, and let's get on with the show. Welcome back to Auntie Sermons, Episode 5, Daughters of Humans. Today we're stepping into one of the strangest passages in Genesis, the story of the sons of God, the daughters of humans, and the Nephilim. If you grew up in church like I did, you were probably told the flood happened because humanity was just so evil. But that's not actually how the story starts. It starts with powerful beings seeing human women and taking them. And almost nobody talks about that part. In this episode, we're slowing the story down. We're asking the questions the text never asks. We're centering the women who were seen, evaluated, taken, and then erased. And we're talking about consent. Let's get into it. Auntie Sermons, Episode 5, Daughters of Humans. When I realized this was the next story that actually mentions a girl, a woman, or really women in the Bible, I thought, oh, this will be fun. Because to me, this story is just ridiculous. And honestly, I don't think I ever really knew this story when I was a Christian. When I was a Christian, I believed the flood happened because people on the earth were so evil. Lying, cheating, stealing, pillaging, all of that. I didn't know about the Nephilim. I did not know about the sons of God. I did not know that the story actually begins with powerful beings sleeping with human women. Here's how the story is introduced. Genesis 6, 1 through 4. Now when men began to multiply on the surface of the ground and daughters were born to them, God's sons saw that men's daughters were beautiful, and they took any that they wanted for themselves as wives. Yahweh said, "My spirit will not strive with man forever because he also is flesh, yet his days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also after that when God's sons came into the men's daughters and they bore children to them. The same were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." I do not remember this story from when I was a Christian, and when I read it now as a non-believer, it immediately struck me as strange. Like it did not belong where it was placed, like somebody crammed it into the text without really knowing what to do with it. And it turns out biblical scholars largely agree with that instinct. Many Old Testament and Hebrew scholars note that Genesis 6, 1 through 4 reads like a fragment from an older myth that was never fully integrated into the flood narrative. It interrupts the flow of the text, introduces divine beings without explanation, centers their actions toward human women, and then abruptly shifts to blaming human wickedness for the flood. Scholars often describe this passage as a preserved mythological remnant, something inherited from earlier traditions that later editors kept, but never fully explained or resolved. Before Christianity ever tried to smooth this story out, Jewish interpreters wrestled with it honestly. In rabbinic tradition, the sons of God are often understood as angels or divine beings who overstepped their boundaries. The women are human women, daughters of humanity, who are acted upon, not blamed. The problem in these interpretations isn't sex, it's violation. Powerful beings crossing lines, abusing power, and bringing chaos into the world. In these traditions, the flood is connected to cosmic disorder, a breakdown between heaven and earth, not simply to bad human behavior. The issue is not that humans were too sinful, but the boundaries meant to protect the world were shattered. Later Christian interpretations take a noticeably different turn. The sons of God become fallen angels, demons, or sometimes just human rulers, or the so-called righteous line of Seth. The women, meanwhile, become morally suspect, temptresses, symbols of corruption, or cautionary tales. The focus shifts away from powerful beings abusing power and toward humanity's supposed inherent sinfulness. Responsibility moves downward. Power disappears from the story, and the flood becomes God's response to human depravity rather than to a violation of boundaries that God never stops. Now, I want to slow this story way down and focus on the only human beings who actually appear in it, the women. They are seen, they are evaluated, they are taken. And the text never once asks the question it should. Consent? Daughters of humans does not mean women with power or protection. These were likely very young girls. Girls whose lives were already controlled by fathers, clans, and survival, and now they are placed in the path of beings with supernatural power. Beings who do not ask but take. The text does not say they chose. It does not say they desired. It does not say they consented. And when God responds, there is no condemnation of the sons of God, no accountability. Instead, the narrative pivots to declaring that humanity is wicked and the world is destroyed. The violation of consent disappears. The women disappear, and the blame spreads everywhere except upward. And here's another reason this story doesn't fit. I've talked to Christian after Christian about it, and when you ask who the sons of God were, you get some of the wildest explanations imaginable. They were giants. And the longer the story gets told, the taller the giants get. Sometimes they're 16 feet tall. Sometimes they're described as towering over cities. Sometimes, and I'm not exaggerating, they're described as being as tall as mountains. And then we're told they slept with human women. And nobody ever stops to think about how that would have been physically possible. No one pauses and asks about anatomy, physics, or logistics, because actually thinking about it would make the whole thing fall apart. When a story can't survive basic questions, belief doesn't clarify it. It escalates it. And at this point, some of you are probably thinking, okay, but what does this have to do with my actual life? Fair. So, let me make this relatable in the weirdest way I know how. Weird Al Yankovic. I know a lot of people think of Weird Al as just the funny song guy, and yes, he absolutely writes funny songs. But Weird Al is also a celebrity with something incredibly rare, a decades-long career, real staying power, and his integrity fully intact. And one of the things Weird Al has consistently said matters most to him is consent. Here's the part most people don't realize. Legally, he does not have to care. Under U.S. copyright law, parody is protected as fair use. A parody does not require permission from the original artist. Weird Al could legally write and release parody songs without asking anyone, and the law would be completely on his side. But he doesn't do that. He always asks for consent anyway. One of the best examples of this is Amish Paradise, his parody of Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. Weird Al asked for permission through Coolio's management and was told yes. Believing he had consent, he wrote the song. It was released. It became a massive hit. After the song was already out, Coolio publicly said he was upset and claimed he hadn't personally approved it. At that point, there was nothing Weird Al could undo. But it's important to say this clearly. Weird Al had not acted maliciously. He genuinely believed consent had been given. Years later, Coolio acknowledged that the situation had been a misunderstanding. He admitted he had overreacted, reconciled with Weird Al, and the two of them even performed Amish Paradise together on stage. And I don't tell this story to dunk on Coolio. I tell it because Weird Al didn't have to ask in the first place. But he did anyway. And when things went sideways, he didn't get defensive. He didn't double down. He didn't weaponize the law. He stayed consistent with who he was. That consistency shows up everywhere in his career. How meticulous he is with his music. How loyal he's been to the same band members since before he was famous. How there's never been a real scandal attached to his name. Consent has always mattered to him, not because the law required it, not because it benefited him, but because it was the right thing to do. And here's the uncomfortable truth that ties all of this together. A parody musician demonstrates better ethics around consent than the God of this Bible, the men who wrote it, and the so-called sons of God in Genesis. Weird Al asks, the sons of God take, God floods the world. One understands that power does not equal permission. The other treats power as entitlement. And that gap matters because the God of this text does not ask. He chooses without consent. He takes without permission, and then he calls it love. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. And before I end this, I want to bring us back to where we started with the women. The women in Genesis 6, the women whose ages we don't know, the women whose voices never appear, the women who are seen, desired, taken, and then erased from the story. Whatever you believe about gods or angels or myths, these women mattered, their bodies mattered, their consent mattered, but the story never asks. It never pauses, it never protects them. Instead, their violation becomes background noise, and the consequences fall everywhere except on the ones who held the power. That's why I wrote a song called Consent. Not just for myself, but for them. For the women whose silence was treated as agreement. For the women whose no was never recorded. For the women whose bodies became theology. Consent isn't silence. Consent isn't obedience. Consent isn't survival. Consent is explicit, especially when power is involved. If you don't get a yes, you never had consent. That line exists because those women never got to say it, because their story was told without them, because their boundaries were never the point. So when I wrote this song, it was not rebellion. It was remembrance. It was naming what was missing. It was saying out loud what the text refuses to say. Their violation was never love. Their bodies were not permission. Their silence was not consent. CONSENT. CONSENT.
Consent.
It's not an option to me.
Consent.
Respect the boundaries. CONSENT. No praying.
No praying. No touch. Don't speak to me without my fucking
CONSENT.
You love your neighbor, but you better ask first. You prey on trauma with that holy thirst. You'll catch these hands if you lay hands on me without my fucking
CONSENT.
Hey, if you don't get a yes, you never had consent. Wife submit, bitch, don't get it bad. My body ain't a toy, dude, don't even play it without consent. Keep your filthy hands away.
CONSENT. No praying, no praying, no touch, don't speak to me
Without my fucking
CONSENT. My yes is my yes, my no is a no.
bitch, learn your scripts,
Learn your scriptures, if you know, you know.
you quote the Bible.
You quote the Bible when it benefits you, but fuck your book.
And fuck you too. You don't ask for consent cause your God never does. He just takes what he wants then calls it love. Chosen without asking, punished for doubt. This is what they preach that love is about. Your Jesus doesn't knock, he demands you comply. Deny yourself, follow me and don't ask why. Heaven's full of godly men, do tell and send me first class straight to
My
heaven.
yes is my yes, my no is a no.
Bitch, learn your scripture.
Learn your scriptures, if you know, you know.
You quote the Bible.
Quote the Bible when it benefits you.
But my consent ain't subject to you.
CONSENT. CONSENT. No praying.
No praying, no touch, don't speak to me without my fucking
CONSENT.
Thank you you so much for listening to Auntie Sermons. If this episode resonated with you, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share it with a friend or two. If you'd like to financially support the podcast, you can find those links in the show notes. You can also find me online. I am Crystal J, all one word, J-A-E, on both YouTube and TikTok. So come say hi, or argue politely, or you can just lurk. I see you. And remember, this is Auntie Sermons. We bring the tea, we question the story, and we absolutely do not apologize for it. Fuck the patriarchy. I'll see you next time. Don't forget, I'm a nice lady.